welcome to episode 31 of the Restoring Human podcast, where we believe humans were designed to flourish. Unfortunately, we live in a culture where many of our modern conveniences work against our thriving, but through intentional lifestyle decisions, we can return to an optimal state of health. I am Jarek.
I'm Dr. Alex Orwell.
And first, you are a podcast celebrity now. Alex was on another show yesterday. Some of our audience probably knows that, but
yeah, or I might be considered an expert on this topic. Definitely was not not an expert on what we talked about yesterday.
It's only on Facebook as we speak. I didn't get a chance to listen to it. If it was on iTunes, I might have, but what kind of, I know vaguely what you guys got into, but.
Well, we were just talking about kind of work, life, church, family, all that, how you balance that.
Yeah.
Like, what is the primary thing influencing your schedule is really what we wanted to get through, because the culture has, taken us in a direction where kind of our personal comfort and our personal desire to be affluent is what Pastor Justin was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what drives people's schedules.
Yeah.
Instead of, them living in a family in the church. So we got into a lot of that. Most of it was my story, so we're going to have to do a part 2 to actually get practical with how, with me having, obviously, a practice to run, a family, my wife, my 5 children, doing this podcast, an elder at the church, MC leader. How does all that happen?
Yeah.
What does my schedule look like, and why does it look like that? It's kind of where we were going, but
cool.
Didn't necessarily get there.
So, really, you say not an expert and stuff like that, which that's valid, but I feel like a lot of this audience of this show would benefit from hearing stuff like that. Whether you're a Christian or not, like there's, I think there's value in, like, there's a specific intent with how you're structuring your days and your weeks and stuff, but ultimately it's also balancing, like there's a major health aspect of, for us to maintain and work towards homeostasis, it definitely includes how are we not freaking out with all the million things that we possibly could put on our schedule every single day,
Yeah. Yeah, and I would say that's probably other than when I have some sort of an event where I'm eating bad food, like I did on Saturday, which is why my voice is not normal right now. When I actually express some sort of symptom of my previous gut issue, it's when I've kind of overextended myself and not allowed for rest, not allowed for the main things to be the main things. I've allowed too many things to come into my life.
Sure. Yeah. So that's actually exactly what we're going to be talking about now, because I also had a very similar and probably more drastic event recently, which brought us to, if you saw already, I titled this Gut Health. We're going to probably spend a few episodes digging in here. But yeah, there was a fairly significant event in my life that kind of brought this topic to surface. So, what'd you do on Saturday, by the way?
My 10-year-old, Creighton, had a state basketball tournament in Des Moines. So we were there, and we went out with this team.
That's right.
And celebrated their end of the season, and they had pizza. And they bought, 10 pizzas, and only, seemed like 3 people ate. So, I guess I'll eat some of this stuff. I don't know why I think I can eat pizza. Pizza destroys me every time.
Really?
And it wasn't even good pizza, so pretty frustrated about it.
Huh. That's interesting. That is there other stuff, or you like that's like one thing that you know?
I mean, there's definitely other stuff that ice cream blows me up for
Mm,
sure, but I haven't done that in a while. I mean, like dairy ice cream
right.
with a bunch of sugar and a bunch of bad fat in it.
Right.
But yeah, pizzas. I mean, if you think about it, it has everything bad that you can have.
Yeah.
Which is that actually makes me think of I learned when I was in like second grade when we were learning like the 4 food groups.
It's got everything.
Yeah,
It's got all the good stuff.
I remember thinking pizza was the healthiest thing you could eat because it has grains, it has vegetables on it if you're gonna do that, has meat, has cheese, so the dairy, all the 4. I don't remember exactly the 4 food groups were, but it had all of it. So I'm like, yeah, we should just eat pizza all the time. Now that's
It's even shaped like the pyramid. Okay. Anyway, so gut health. I'll just tell a little bit about what happened. So, uh, man, what is it? March 1st. Happy March. About a month ago, exactly a month ago, I actually had served on a jury. This is the start of this story. Was summoned for jury duty. Cool. Gotta go do this. Whatever. Got selected to be a part of that. Okay. Found out it's a murder trial. Okay, it's gonna take a few days. So basically, it ended up being a full week, and then we had to come back on Monday. So I had 6 days that I had to report and be a part of this whole thing. And during that time, like during those days, I could definitely sense, um, just the stress that it was causing, just, mentally engaging with the story of everything and kind of how that was affecting me. There's a number of nights where I came home and like my wife knew like I wasn't myself. I wasn't normal. Like it was a lot of mental, emotional work that I had to do sitting in on this and, having empathy for what's happening and also trying to decide, okay, I'm ultimately here to find the truth in these stories and all this stuff. Anyway, very taxing mentally, emotionally. I mean, I slept like a champ all those days, like physically, all this stuff. That happened, so I was involved with that for 6 days. At the same time, I kind of had some stuff at work change a little bit, so I had some different responsibilities last month that were new things for me to figure out. Plus, I had somebody that worked for me that changed, and so I had to do some like training stuff and a lot of different changes happening all while I was supposed to be there while I was gone. Just had a very, very heightened stressful environment around all aspects of life, because then all that stuff caused me to then have a shorter capacity with things at home and all of this stuff. Plus, then dealing with all that, so I'm usually, most days fasting and not eating until later in the day. Well, having emotional stress, thinking, oh, I haven't really eaten anything today. Really easy to have days where it's like, yeah, we want pizza tonight? Great. Like, that sounds fine. And so, essentially, all of these little pieces, I think, built up to, what would it have been, last Sunday, I got this real bad stomach ache. And it was like Sunday afternoon. I was like, nah, I'll take a nap. One of our kids is terrible about taking naps. He only sleeps if you're laying there right next to him. So I was like, I'll just take a nap with him. Took a nap, skipped dinner. I was like, I shouldn't do that. Got home and I'm starving. So I'm like, okay, I'll try to eat something before bed. Bad decision. Stomachache definitely came back. Woke up the next morning, felt fine. Knew I didn't eat very much the day before, so like ate breakfast that day when I probably normally wouldn't have. Ate like normal. Then middle of the afternoon, I was drinking you didn't actually grab one. I was drinking a carbonated water, soda water. You get the point. Uh, and all of a sudden, this stomachache like starts to kind of creep back up. I'm like, dang it. And that's when I text you guys like, hey, can I come into the office, get adjusted? Not feeling super great, whatever. Didn't really know what was going on. Night passes. Don't think I ate anything the rest of that night. Then Tuesday, ate like normal. And then it was late Tuesday night that came back hard. And this was like the worst it had been. Texting you, trying to figure out what the heck is going on. Basically, through sharing stuff with you, looking up some things online, figured out, okay, this has something to do with like stomach acid, uh, the stomach lining, and potentially you said, you might have an ulcer. It's like, oh, great. Um, at some point in there, I had a number of things like jogged in my memory. So the one thing was that this feeling I was having, I realized I wasn't completely unfamiliar with it. Something that I had experienced a number of years ago. I want to say high school, if not before. Just these really intense, strange stomach aches. I mean, granted, now I know at that point I was living a lifestyle and eating a highly inflammatory diet and all this stuff, and completely makes sense now. But I had kind of forgot that I had dealt with like this same feeling a few times when I was younger, until I was like, oh, that I remember this pain. And I remembered about I think it was probably last summer. It's like a year and a half, almost 2 years ago now. I read, what is the name of the book? Maybe it was just last year. Anyway, the book Eat Dirt, Josh Axe's gut book. And a part of that is this little quiz questionnaire thing to kind of classify what he calls a gut type. And I was classified as what he calls a gastric gut. So I learned a few things about kind of how my stomach was dealing with stuff. I learned that I probably have like a lower amount of stomach acid. I belch all the time and these other different signs. Started taking some digestive enzymes to help with that. Started being more focused on like chewing my food a ton and a number of different things. So I was like, oh, this is all really, really related. Yeah, so whatever night that was, that was Tuesday night. The next morning, I had to get on an airplane to fly out to do a job for about 48 hours and come back on Thursday night. I was like, I do not want to be trying to figure this out during this time. So talking to you that night, kind of had some more clarity on what was going on. We had decided that the best thing for me to do was to not eat. Basically, I understood that in giving my gut and body just time to rest and chill out and recover and, do the work that it needed to repair the damage that I had caused. I guess there's a number of different things that I've been doing since then, but anyway, I'll pause there and see if you have any reactions to any of that. I know you've been, a part of all this, but
yeah, I guess it was a good example of if there is this underlying thing that's happening that potentially is not causing you to express a lot of symptoms most of the time.
Yeah.
And if you're living the right lifestyle, you're probably not going to see it as a big deal. I mean, even if you are like, if you have bloating occasionally or if you're belching a lot, those just seem to be kind of normal to people.
Right.
But when everything comes to a head, right, you have all this stressful stuff going on, not eating the food you should be eating. Combine that with your history of just the gut type that you have. Now it all
makes
sense. Something hit the fan.
All makes sense. Yeah. And right. So once you kind of help me identify, it's either an actual developed ulcer or something, leading to something like that. Kind of started to connect all these dots, and it's like, okay, from my perspective, I'm just a dude who has a, strange interest in health and the body and stuff. I'm not trained in anything, but I understand that it's not just some acute cause of stuff most of the time. There's all different kinds of things that can be working against. We already talked about this homeostasis, and I was able to kind of piece together all these dots. Like, okay, this makes perfect sense of why this is happening right now.
Yeah.
So maybe let's start there. There's two kind of things that we talked about, this gastritis and ulcer. Do you want to maybe just explain what those two things are?
Well, gastritis is just inflammation of your stomach lining. Anytime there's some sort of a damage that's in your stomach, then the body's going to try to go and heal that area, which brings inflammation. So gastritis is just the medical term for your stomach lining being inflamed. And then an ulcer is when there's actually significant damage to that stomach lining, where then now, it's so painful because there's stomach acid potentially that's going to be leaking out. There's other things that potentially could come in, and then it's just, now that there's that much more damage, the body's really trying to heal the area, so there's going to be a lot of inflammation at those particular times. So yeah, it definitely sounds like that's where you got to.
Yeah. So I guess now maybe some helpful stuff if any of you have ever dealt with something like this. So what I ended up doing, so at this point I feel like I'm fairly confident it wasn't an actual developed ulcer. I feel like I would be in more pain still currently. I don't know. Maybe you're the doctor.
Well, I mean, I think with anything in the health, it could be, there's different levels of it, right? It could have just been potentially almost an ulcer. It could have been a very slight ulcer. Most likely wasn't a significant ulcer that would have, put you in the hospital and potentially taken your life. Doesn't sound like that was the case. But obviously, if you would have stayed in that stressful environment and not did anything to help it, then potentially could have got there.
Yeah. So, like I said, decided, okay, the best thing for me to do is probably to not add any more stress to that environment, basically. So that Wednesday morning, I went and got a bunch of new tea. So this was a good thing. I had been not drinking coffee for a week at that point, so that wasn't a big issue not to have any coffee. But I got, what was it, chamomile and licorice root tea. So first, what is it, draxe.com. That's like my go-to source whenever something is going on. So basically typed in gastritis or probably at that point I typed in ulcer on there. He's basically like Google for natural health, has an article, has videos, watched all that stuff, made basically a grocery list of all this stuff that he's talking about, went out and got this stuff. So what I was doing for those couple days that I wasn't eating, that licorice root and chamomile tea, I bought some glutamine, I bought I hadn't been daily taking a probiotic supplement, so I bought that. The night before, I actually got, when I was like halfway wherever was going on, I picked up those digestive enzymes from you. Um, and then I got some bone broth, some different collagen protein powders, some aloe vera juice, and that might be it. Do you maybe want to talk about what some of those things are actually doing?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that I could speak to all of them, but I would say most of it was just trying to decrease the inflammation. I would say that's what most likely the teas are there for. Chamomile is just really calming to the body, so I would say that's kind of just the heightened reaction that the body felt like it was under stress, so that which was potentially producing pain for you. So that was probably calming for the body. So that's more of a like symptom relief, which I think is what you were looking for at that particular time. Glutamine is really healing for the body, especially the gut. So any of the linings of the gut, the intestinal tract, glutamine is going to be healing for it. So that's what you're taking the glutamine for. Obviously, probiotics are just good overall for the gut. Our whole entire gut lining is lined with good bacteria. One of the main causes, really, I think studies are starting to show that the for sure cause of ulcers is a bacteria called H. pylori. So if that grows too much, then it's going to cause an ulcer in your stomach. So they used to think that it was stress that led to ulcers, but the stress just leads to low stomach acid production, and the lower the stomach acid production,
Right.
is the stronger H. pylori can be. So that's most likely what led to either, again, if it was just a potential ulcer or full blown ulcer, was H. pylori. So again, probiotics are going to fight against that and hopefully drown out that bad bacteria that was in there. I don't remember what else you said you were doing.
Aloe vera juice.
Oh, aloe vera, same thing, just heals. Most people know you can put aloe vera if a cut is on your arm. Just helps to heal the epithelial tissue. Same type of tissues in the gut, so it's going to heal that as well. So yeah, a lot of healing things, bringing down inflammation, just soothing, fighting against the bad bacteria. It's kind of the approach there.
Yeah.
With all those things.
Yeah. So there's some supplements and some liquids in there, but for about 48 hours, I had no food in my stomach. Then the first thing I ate was like a vegetable soup. So a lot of broth, soft vegetables, nothing terribly difficult. Then for the next few days, I stuck to like soups and smoothies and stuff that wasn't going to. I know that one of the things that has probably caused some of the issues in the past is eating quickly, not chewing well, and so doing things that are technically like pre-chewed,
Yeah.
essentially. But thankfully, granted the past week or so has looked different, but I've not experienced any other symptoms since that real bad night.
Yeah.
Um,
So yeah, I mean that's a good example of way back when we first started this thing, we went through kind of the different forms of healthcare. So we talked about reactionary healthcare, which is definitely still needed if you're going to be healthy. But most people think reactionary healthcare is going into the doctor and getting some sort of a medicine, to get rid of your symptom, where you knew that you were in a lot of pain, and just kind of this acute situation that you were in, you needed to kind of bring down some of that suffering, knowing that it wasn't just something that you could just get rid of, that what you were feeling and you'd be fine. There's a cause that happened before that, so you'll be addressing that. But until you can actually address that, which is going to take a longer period of time, you went with something natural to kind of address those symptoms. Now, had that not been working, you would have known that you still had to react. So then potentially you would have went to something stronger. If there's some sort of medication that could have been get done. But if you didn't have to get there, of course, we want to try to avoid that at all cost.
Yeah. So there's one thing, a part of this that I thought was interesting. So when I was looking at treatment on ulcers and stuff, one of the points on the Axe website was he actually said, oh, that's a good question, Rebecca. We'll get there. He actually said, don't fast. So eat smaller meals and spread them out. And so I read that and I was like, there's more to that. And so I asked you about that. And so what he was saying is trying to avoid large meals, just stuff that's harder for the stomach to process and digest and, get through. And so that made sense, but then I was like, what I understand about my body and especially my gut is that fasting is going to, like, basically eliminating the work that my gut has to do is going to allow it to do healing things.
Right.
And so that's when I kind of asked you about that question. So that was super interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, the more you put in your body, the more stomach acid needs to be produced, the more digestive enzymes need to be produced. It's the more work that your body has to do, and you could be compounding it, if you didn't chew your food perfectly or if it was just tough food in general to break down.
Mm-hmm.
So any food requires work to be broken down. So that's why we were like, nah, just if you can, stay away,
Mm-hmm.
Drink liquids, stay hydrated, or do some of those healing things that you were doing. But avoiding food would be best. But what he was talking about is most people, when they just don't eat, then what they're going to do because they're really hungry is just eat a huge meal, which would be the worst thing for your gut.
Yeah.
Specifically in your situation. But it's always the worst thing for your gut to just eat a huge meal that's never chewed properly and just puts a lot of strain on the gut. So, that was good that you, because I think he's writing to people that aren't going to have necessarily an understanding with you or not working with somebody that can help them.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sure why he said that.
Yeah, which, again, reading that, avoid large meals, I'm like, oh, yeah, I definitely do that. If there's a lot of times where I'll fast for, a good number of hours, maybe have something light in the afternoon, and then have the majority of my caloric intake during the day between, 6 and 8. And that's normal, And so being more conscious about that, because I definitely, like, you almost feel, there's days where you feel like justified. No, I haven't had a ton to eat. I need to take in, more calories right now. I don't want to create this swinging imbalance and all this type of stuff. But yeah.
If a dog had an ulcer, he would not eat. He would just lay down and drink water.
Yeah.
They're smarter than us.
So this, I think I was like sitting in the airport talking to you about all this stuff, and I go, all right, when are we talking about gut health on the podcast? So that's kind of what has brought this up. There's a lot more to say about this, so we're gonna create some content for you. It'll be put out this month. Be looking forward to that. If you have questions revolving around gut health, please ask them. We're going to record a couple things now. We'll probably do some more, especially if people have some specific questions. But yeah, that's where we're headed. Also, last month when we did this, January, whatever it was, you probably noticed that we didn't change our clothes because we recorded them all on the same day. If you're watching,
I want to take this off for the next one.
If you're watching, Austin, I chose this shirt very intentionally. Supporting one of our faithful podcast listeners.
We answer that question, or we?
Do you want to answer that now, or do you want to put that in with the next one?
Oh, we can do it now because it's Facebook Live question.
Yeah. So Rebecca asked, how can a chiropractic adjustment help the gut? So for me, that was, at one point, I was like, okay, something's not right here. said, "Hey, can I come in?"
Yeah. So then what I did is I went back to my textbooks of school and looked up ulcer adjustment, and that's what I performed on.
Did you really?
Oh. There's no such thing as ulcer adjustment or headache adjustment or low back pain adjustment. So we said that there's kind of layers to what was happening with you to how you got to where you were at. So let's say it was an ulcer. That happened because H. pylori, this bacteria, grew enough to cause that damage in your stomach.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how H. pylori grew enough is because your stomach acid was low.
Mm-hmm.
And most likely, hearing your history, the reason your stomach acid was low was because of all the stress that you were going through.
Mm-hmm.
It's not actually the stuff that we experience, or even kind of how we what's happening in our mind or our emotions that leads to bad physiology. It's how our physiology responds to what's going on. So if our body receives this emotional stress or this mental stress that you are going through, that's no different to the body than if a bear was running at you.
Sure.
Right? So things change in the body when we're under stress. It's called the fight or flight response. And of the two parts of the nervous system, that's called the sympathetic nervous system. So that's kind of the gas pedal. You need to do something, right? You need to run away from that bear. You need to fight that bear back. Well, the other part of that nervous system is called the parasympathetic nervous system, which balances that out. It should be a big balance. We shouldn't be super high sympathetic. We shouldn't be super high parasympathetic. Parasympathetic is called rest and digest. So if you want to digest food properly, then you need to be in that parasympathetic state. So you weren't digesting food properly because you didn't have the stomach acid. So we wanted to put you more into that parasympathetic state with a chiropractic adjustment, taking stress off the nervous system so that you could get into that rest and digest state, which is just going to promote healing in your body. Your body should then produce better stomach acid because it's now in the proper, the nervous system has the proper tone to lead to good digestion. Whereas opposed if you were still under that stress, nervous system stress, then you wouldn't have been able to digest as well and produce enough stomach acid.
Yeah. Yeah. So knowing that I was in a very heightened, stressful environment over those next 2 days, I'm out of town, gone for whatever it was, 36 hours. The actual job that I had to do was a matter of 3 or 4 hours. So normally I've got all these other hours to get other work done. I intentionally didn't do the type of stuff that I would normally do. I've got a couple hours on this flight, a couple hours sitting in this car, all this different stuff, and trying to I'm very type A, maximize efficiency. That's where my head's gonna go at all times. And I had to intentionally kind of work against that. I had a book, read some stuff, chilled out. On one of the flights, I watched a movie, intentionally rested, tried not to, increase that stress. Like you were saying, it's not necessarily that I am feeling stressed out by it. I feel like I have a pretty high threshold for a lot of this stuff, but my body was clearly responding in a negative way.
Yep.
Yeah. So I shouldn't stress. Okay, got it. On it. There you go, Christina. That's good. Yeah, it's a huge component.
Well, I mean, I guess we could kind of speak to that. Yeah, we want to try to minimize the amount of stress that we're under, but you're right. You shouldn't. Chronic stress is the problem, right? If something happens to us, if a family member dies, or we lose a job, or different things like that, we should be able to deal with those things, but we shouldn't hold on to them, suppress them, so that it now becomes chronic stress. Because that's going to affect a number of different things, but it's for sure affecting you physically, creating negative physiology.
Yeah. What's interesting is, so for me, I've done a lot of work over the past few years with diet and exercise and eliminating, toxins and stuff. But then this stress piece is something that it's not always as tangible, and so it's something that kind of went untouched for a couple weeks and created this problem. But interestingly, within like the medical community, I feel like stress is something that while diet and movement and stuff may not be as highly valued, it seems like within the medical community, stress is a known factor with certain things. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I know they know it leads to all the chronic diseases, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, Alzheimer's, depression, all those different things that people deal with now chronically. They know that there's a huge stress piece.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that they have an answer for it. Obviously, there's no medication for getting rid of stress. There's no surgery to get rid of stress. So there's
no real chill pill.
Yeah. They can pretty much say what Christine said. There's don't stress, right?
Yeah. Right.
Easier said than done, but that is the right recommendation.
Yeah. Cool. We're going to talk way more about the gut. I just remembered that it was our last episode where you were talking about the bulletproof tea. I've been all over it since then. This is the chamomile, the licorice. I put a little matcha in there. Chamomile, licorice, matcha, bulletproof.
You get yak butter?
No.
Not yak butter.
Still just Kerrygold.
Cool.
Sweet. That's it for all my problems here. Thanks for listening. Hopefully you learned something. I definitely did. And yeah, we'll catch you next week.